turn the lights on. Oh, you were.
I wasn't in the movie, but I'll go talk to anybody anytime.
Is your mic on? Mic on?
Yeah, my mic's on. Hello. May not be super loud.
All right, go first.
What do you feel? How do you feel after seeing this tribute to some of your life's work?
Well, I've been given the DVD but haven't watched it yet, so this is the first time I saw it, and that's a little bit, whoa, I mean, it was unbelievable, you know, when people say that great of things about you all the time, so I smiled. It was unbelievably, it was actually so much, the movie was so much on the mark that I would consider, you know, it was what you're seeing is, you know, what you believe. I've been involved with some other independent films, and this is by far the best one I've seen.
Very good.
Anybody else? Are we going home? Or?
We got one mic on that side, one mic on this side.
Gentlemen up front.
Well, this is for Wozniak as well. In the early days of when you were selecting hardware, this is a pretty geeky question, so forgive me if it's off topic. How did you go about deciding which microprocessor to go with in the original Apple?
In the early days when I was deciding components, how did I choose which microprocessor to go with for the first Apples? And I was hanging around a club. I'll tell you, the best things I ever did in my life were because I had no money. And same for Steve. We had no bank accounts. We didn't have valuable assets we could sell to raise any money. We were, you know, none of us had any business experience. Neither of us, we were just, you know, young, in our young 20s. Well, so the Intel, I knew that finally this microprocessor was, I had this idea of how I was going to finally build a computer, the dream of my life, and the Intel processor was $400. And that was just, no way I was going to come up with $400 ever. And as an employee at Hewlett Packard, I could get a Motorola one for $40. So I designed it all around the Motorola. And then a company introduced one compatible to the Motorola for $20. And it was the latest and the greatest and the best one yet. And basically just looked at the features, and I can start right out of the little microprocessor with not a bit of code around it, and I'm going to write my own from the bottom up. So it didn't matter. I just wanted the best processor and the cheapest price. And everything was oriented around trying to find the simplest formula, the fewest parts and the lowest price. And I think Steve really, I think when it came to the Macintosh stuff, you know, and he was saying, you know, Andy was saying that wanted to kind of emulate the Apple II, it was find the ways to do it for low cost. And that's really key to production, to a company that has a successful product.
Even before that, you had another product. Do you have any funny stories to tell about your phone freaking days?
Even before that, I had another product. Do I have any funny stories to tell about the phone freaking days? Not in this place right now. But I will say one thing. The Apple II, I think, was the 5th time that I designed something on my own, just for the heck of it, for fun, to give it away, to use. And Steve Jobs came along and said, let's turn it into money. Let's sell it here or sell it there. That was actually the 5th time. And the Blue Box free phone call device in college, that was the first.
Right here, yes.
Yeah, question for was, whose idea was it to promote the US Festival in 1982 in Glen Helen Park?
Whose idea was it to promote the big, huge US Festival concerts?
Yeah,
1 million people attended over 3 days in 1982 and again in 1983. Whose idea was it? It was all my own idea and conception. Basically, more money than you ever need in life, and I kind of even didn't want it. I'm scared of the corruption of big money. What could you do that's really neat for people, good for people? I didn't intend to lose as much money as I did, and I hope you hear about another real wholesome, huge concert event we planned that'll probably happen, US Festival in 2010.
No.
Okay? So I can
Yeah, I was just curious.
I have a question too. I'm sorry. This is kind of
Oh,
it's
Daniel
a
would like
tribute,
that.
actually, so it might consume a little bit of time. What do you think? Seeing each other's story, how do you feel? What do you guys think? I guess is my question. Being guests here tonight.
Think of what?
The movie.
Oh, good.
Yeah, why not? Or and each other in that sense, because I know some of you haven't never met each other before and are all talking about the same thing. Anybody want to?
Man, I don't know who.
I'm not sure the people in the movie are the ones to answer that.
Right.
Okay, well then, you know. Anybody else have a question? Mine was better. Up front, yeah.
Oh, we got an answer over here.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Well,
sorry.
I'm gonna try.
Okay.
I don't know how well it'll come across, but we'll give it a try. I was at the very beginning of the thing, and I could never have imagined when I was working with Steve Wozniak, Steve Jobs, that it was ever going to turn into what it did turn into over the decades. But sitting here now, meeting a whole bunch of people that I never met, who really made it all possible, who really put the flesh and the skin and the character on the bones and turned it into something as magical as it is. It's, to me, astonishing. And I think that these two gentlemen, Mr. Baca and Mr. Rizzo, I think have caught that character in this particular presentation.
You know, and one thing grabbed me, I mean, it's like that whole idea, it's so hard to put things into word. Like, I can't tell you why you're gonna like a certain song with logical reasons. You have to hear it yourself and judge it. But it was what Andy said just gets me. It was like, it was our spirit to the world coming to you through the screen, you know, brightening you in a way through the screen. It was just a great image. That's how we feel about our masks. Much more emotional than logical.
I thought you guys did a great job with the film. I had no idea how it would turn out, but it's hard to intercut the stuff, and you came up with really good segues and kept even though you only had one camera, you used the effects to make it varied. I thought you did a tremendous job. Really enjoyed it.
I got to hear some commentary from Jim on something. We have a question for Jim.
Yes.
Right up front here.
Oh, why was he given credit that said Jim Reek's lawnmower?
Oh, in the credits?
Yes.
We just decided to thank Jim Reek's lawnmower for the laugh. He's got a lawnmower, but he doesn't sit around talking about it.
The cinematography actually was really cool. I was, you know, I haven't seen the film. I kind of remember what I said, barely. But the cinematography was really interesting. I liked it a lot. But my favorite scenes is the Max in the environment. Like, I could watch an hour of that.
That's on this.
That's great.
That's great. That's on the DVD.
That's like a screensaver.
If we knew how to write one for OS 10, we would.
Sorry, yeah.
I thought it was very funny, a lot funnier than you know, very difficult to make that kind of material amusing, and of course these guys did a great job, very humorous.
That mic is actually off.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's a Windows mic.
Oh, there you go.
It's a one button mic. Figured it out though. So I don't know if you want me to repeat that. I was, you know, very amused by these guys. Unfortunately, you know, they didn't have any funny lines, but these guys were very, very funny. And it's hard to make this stuff funny, but Jeff and Andy and Guy I thought was super amusing.
I'm actually embarrassed that I was in the movie so much because relative to what Andy and Pearl and Bill and Boych and Murray did, and Joanna did, and Susan Kerr, I think they were the real heroes of Macintosh. I came into the division relatively late. I took a lot of the credit, don't get me wrong. But I think, you know, it was the engineers that did it. That's the heroes of Macintosh. So.
Fair enough, yeah.
Go back to questions.
Question right up top there.
What?
That's you, sir.
Okay. Are you guys going to go back to John Moltz and give him a chance to re-record his interview segments? Because my understanding is he's a little upset that he put you off.
Oh, you mean he regret that he didn't do it in person because of the eye check? Yeah, we tried to color correct him. It was difficult, but I've read Twitter also. You know, I read that, so I would love to talk to John Moltz again. He is quite humorous. You know, especially I think I like it that he has taken his humor to Twitter. I follow him there, and boy. He's got some interesting things, most of which, you know, on Crazy Apple Rumors back when he was doing that, I think that you know, a lot of the headlines that he had up there were a little bit off color, so we couldn't show them. But yeah, I mean, if I would love to talk to John Moltz in person. That would be great. Yes.
Especially as anybody wants to answer, is there like an example where you felt that the cult of Mac was somehow harmful to the company, or harmful to the vision that it had, or anything like that?
Well, that's like asking the Pope if he thinks Catholicism is bad.
Right down front there.
Exactly right.
there are some risks with it. There are some risks with the cult aspect, yes. Because then all of a sudden, if something, you'll judge what's good as if it comes from Apple. You'll judge what's good, what the Pope says, rather than thinking for yourself in every case.
But the cult definitely saved Apple in the mid-90s, right? Don't you think? In the late 90s? It was the only thing that kept it alive. We wouldn't be here now if it wasn't for those guys.
Yes, sir. Two things. One, can I get you all to look this way? And then, second question is, you know, I think half of the appeal of the Mac is the community that.
iPhone.
Progress.
John Scully.
John Scully. Why is he not in the film?
I think half the appeal
Sorry. I gotta turn this off, so.
is the community that's around it, and I think part of the reason that it's such a tight-knit community is that it's so small. But you know, Apple's market share is growing, you know, pretty rapidly. Do you think that that'll affect the way that the community is, or do you think that because it's such a great product and such a great product philosophy that things will stay the way that they have been as far as the passion of the Mac users? Anybody? I'm just asking in general.
Well, as long as Apple keeps making transcendently great products, the community will be there. It'll be a little sad if the products aren't good and people are just hanging on because of the past glory. But I think, especially as long as Steve is around, they'll continue to blow everyone's mind.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to hear from each of you if you have a favorite memory, a wow moment, or a story, anecdote. What's your favorite memory of Apple? If you were all present at some pretty important times in the company's history, so if I were to ask you what your favorite memory of Apple was, or your favorite story, what would it be for each of you?
Well, going back to where we introduced the Apple II was a big one for me, but I think my favorite of all, always hit on it, it was almost all in the movie, it was Steve Jobs making his presentation about IBM and where they stood and how Apple had come, this little company, and was trying to change the world and free us and make us masters of things with computers, and it ended with the 1984 advertisement that wasn't shown in the movie. And I was in the crowd, and I just walked out, you know, just totally like a changed person from that day.
Yeah, I was going to actually say the exact same thing. The Macintosh introduction was sort of the culmination of it. Some of us have been working on it for more than 3 years, and to finally see it. So even if Steve wasn't brilliant at introducing it, it still would have been an incredible moment to finally have our work, you know, hit the streets. But then it was just so emotional for all of us. If you watch that video on the web just after what they showed in the movie, you can see Steve holding back tears as everyone was applauding after that demo. I also, because we had put that demo together with very little sleep and in a very quick way, I also was just so happy that everything worked.
Ron?
The most memorable.
Actually, is there a button on this thing?
Oh no, you're good. You're good. You're
Oh,
on.
okay. The one moment with my whole involvement with Apple was the fun of spending an afternoon putting that logo together that I knew would never be a practical logo.
That's all it was for that incredible etching you did by hand on paper. You look it up here and you think, oh, that's easy to do on a computer.
My most memorable was probably the time I was nearly fired, but the one I probably really talk about the most is the one that got cut from the movie. I hope it's on the outside.
It is on the extras. It's my favorite one.
So there's a story about how the Beep So Sue Me came about. That's probably my most memorable.
Do you want to tell the story?
Tell the story.
Again?
Come on.
It's just, the short version is Apple Corps, the Beatles legal group, was suing Apple, the computer company, because of the name Apple. And there was an agreement made long before I was born or something about you can't get involved with music. So long as you're not doing music, you can call yourself Apple. I mean, these two guys could probably tell you a lot more about all that. So then I show up and I'm trying to change the startup sound and the sound manager, and there's a microphone, and I'm trying to do all this music stuff. And so I was trying to change the beeps, and I added a beep and it was a chime hit. It was just a hit on a xylophone. I called it chime, and then the Apple lawyers called up the director of software and said, you can't. I mean, you got to remember too. At the same time, like if you're a programmer, there's header files. They were like dogging me about the names and header files. There was words in there that were too musical, as they said. So we were breaking developers' code because the Apple lawyers were scrutinizing everything. I mean, you got to remember too, the Apple core lawyers are English barristers. These guys wear horse-haired wigs. So there's these English guys running around my cube, taking memos out of my desk, and annoying me to no end. And we were working on System 7 at the time, and so we're usually working from lunch till dinner, and then we come back and we work like another 8 hours. So it's like 3 in the morning, and I get the memo saying you can't call it chime because it's too musical. So I said, I know, I'll call it Let It Beep.
Perfect.
I thought that was awesome, but like there's no way that's going to get past the lawyer. So then I'm trying to figure out how I can call it something really clever and get it past the people that have absolutely no sense of humor. So I said, I know.
Apple Road.
Yeah. I said, I know, so sue me. I said, we just got to spell it funny. Like, we'll spell it like it's a Japanese word. And then, so the director of software engineering happened to be there at the time. And I said, look, call back the lawyer and don't pronounce it. Just spell it over the phone. Tell them it's some Japanese word. It doesn't mean anything musical. And it went past. Like they accepted it. Now I don't know if the lawyers actually understood the joke or not. But I did actually read about it in a sidebar of some legal journal about patent, trademark. I mean, some total legal nerd journal actually has a little side story about it. So I think they actually did get it. So anyway, like that's really how, and to this day it's still there. Like, oh my God, I can't believe it's still there. So sue me. It was all about the Beatle lawsuit. We didn't win. They paid for it.
Well, I've never worked at Apple, and I'm not allowed on campus. They don't take my phone calls. I don't get invited to the events.
Me neither.
Here you are.
I guess I'm in a good company. So I don't have any recollections about the company. I did enjoy the iPhone introduction a couple of years ago, and I thought there was a real sense of history there. And it was, pretty amazing couple of hours to watch that unfold. I think, it was a sort of the modern era is sort of 1984 introduction, the equivalent of the introduction of the Mac. So a privilege to see that.
Okay, so one day I'm sitting in my cube, evangelizing software developers, shucking and jiving, doing what I'm supposed to do. And in pops Steve Jobs with this guy, and Steve says, what do you think of this company? I don't know, it looked like KnowledgeWare or something. And I said, well, Steve, it's kind of a mediocre company. It's got lousy software. Software is very character-based, not very interesting, German practice. It's really not suitable for Macintosh. It's kind of shitty software. And then Steve turns to the guy and he says, and he turns to me and he turns to the guy and he says, Guy, I want you to meet the CEO of KnowledgeWare. that was when I knew he was a special person.
I have another very funny story to share, which is a friend of mine, Dan Cochran, was around, and he was asked by Steve Jobs one day, they were waiting. You knew that this day was going to be the day that Apple was going to announce a new CEO. Turned out to be John Sculley, but nobody knew yet. And Jerry Brown, sometimes called Moonbeam Brown, was visiting Apple. Didn't know a thing about computers, and Steve Jobs asked Dan Cochran to show him around. Took him around to a Lisa room, and he showed him the mouse and the cursor that was going to come out. And Jerry kind of didn't get it or anything. And he's walking around with Jerry, and all these people kind of shocked. They're saying, "Don't tell me it's Jerry Brown." He said, "Yeah, it's Jerry Brown." And then, you know, resumes were flying. They thought he was the new CEO.
Oh, that's funny.
Yes, sir, right there.
Question for Guy. Do you have a, was there a particular software developer you were proselytizing to where you thought it was a big win that you got them? Or was there one in particular that thought you were some sort of cancer that you had to, you know?
Well, the software developers that hated me the most, we'll start that way, were Ashton Tate,
Oh.
Lotus, and Microsoft. And I'm quite proud of that. And frankly, probably one of my favorite software developers ever was Charlie Jackson in Silicon Beach Software. Because, you know, it was obvious you're supposed to kiss up to Lotus and kiss up to Ashton Tate and, you know, kiss up to all those people. But, you know, it was the two guys in the garage who were just fell in love with Macintosh, didn't crank any spreadsheet, just wanted to create cool software, Silicon Beach Software, you know, that kind of stuff. Cassidy and Green did some cool stuff. And those are the people that I love. And so those are my favorite kind of companies to deal with. The other people, you know, when the CEO of Lotus wanted a parallel cable to go between a Lisa and a Macintosh, he called up Steve Jobs to call me up to get the cable to FedEx to him, you know. And so I've never forgiven Lotus for that.
Didn't turn out so good for them.
No, it didn't. Right up front.
If you guys have any collections and you're willing to talk about it, of the old Macintosh peripherals or anything like that, what do you have that might either be the oldest or the thing that you prize the most? And this is for everybody.
The oldest?
Yeah, like you know, like or a cube or you know, up to or anything.
My Onomac card. You remember the Onomac program, right?
I hate to tell you, as soon as whenever I get a new Mac, I use it for about 6 or 9 months, and then I feel like it's degrading and it's slowing down, and I sell it and I buy a new one because I don't want to debug it. So that's my I have a planned obsolescence plan for me. I don't. So the guy with the 6,000 square feet of used thing, I'm the antithesis of that. I could keep that guy supplied. I don't have very much sentimental value for that stuff. I do have one laptop that is signed by Tony Hawk. The screen's cracked, and it would cost more to fix the screen. But I have one signed by Tony Hawk, which incidentally, I'll tell you another funny story. I never had a problem getting through airport security with that computer. They would just say, "Wow, Tony Hawk signed this. Clearly, you're not a terrorist." No taking off shoes, nothing. I mean,
To me, a great sentimental favorite, the Cube. I just loved that Cube so much. Used it in my main home machine. The 20th anniversary Mac at this time, I loved showing those off into my class, and the sound system was so good. Now, as another sentimental thing, we did an advertisement where Yao Ming had the new small 13-inch computer and had the 17-inch. So I bought one of the small ones. I went to a basketball game and got Yao Ming to sign it for me.
No Apple ones?
Oh yeah.
How many?
No, I don't have that many. I don't collect most of the old stuff. I'm like Guy. I move on to the new computer and pretty much find needy people that can use the others.
We just moved to a new house after living in the old place for 18 years. So I had to, go through everything and make decisions about what was dear to me. And probably the dearest thing was my original Apple II, serial number 1709. There's no way I could get rid of that. Also the cubes, I kept my 2 cubes because I love this. But I did throw out all my original Apple II peripheral cards. I had about 2 dozen of them. Had to think, am I really going to ever don't want to be burdened by those? And I threw out about maybe half of what I had, but a lot of them are. I kept one of the original iMacs, kept the Cube. My Silent Type printer, which was the first product I developed for Apple, that's way too dear to get rid of.
Can I ask Andy a question?
Yeah.
Do you think we should have license the Macintosh OS?
It depends on when. Sure, from from 1985 to 1990, that was the window when it really could have made a big difference.
We have a gentleman here that is, believe it or not, one of his requests, he was sent here by the Make-A-Wish Foundation. His name is Adam. He wanted to see our film, and he has a question for all you gentlemen. He's right there in the back, in the middle.
Okay, I'm sure you've been asked this, or at least answered it many times these last few days, but I have to at least ask to whoever wants to answer what you think of Apple's announcements over the last week, the iLife, and your honest opinion, if you offer.
Yeah, I actually felt the iLife announcements were good for most people, even though they don't necessarily fit the world where I'm going to use iLife. The hardware announcement, the new 17-inch, available with the solid-state disc. That is a term that just strikes me. I'm always trying to get to the more solid-state approaches to things. And I think the most significant announcement was the no DRM in the iTunes Store, because the iTunes Store is a big, huge part of Apple that kind of gets forgotten. It's like we have computer and we have iPod and we have iPhone. That iTunes Store actually holds you to the iPod and the iPhone, and is another important leg of Apple's. So that's a big step. I'm happy.
Just pretty boring for a range of Apple things. Of course, they're gonna refresh, iLife and iWork, and the laptop was just a follow-on from the Unibody laptops announced last fall. The battery is interesting but vexing in the way Steve sometimes is, because it's great to have the capacity, but it's horrible to not be able to replace it. And I agree with Woz, getting rid of the DRM. I felt great about that.
And on the battery issue, I'm one who actually travels all the time on planes, and I always don't want to run out, and I carry 3 batteries. Very often I switch, sometimes I go through 2 or 3. But I actually came to like this new battery that's not changeable, because it's going to last longer, the one battery, and if you do need to change, you can always carry those plug-ins, the kind of big wide ones that fit under your computer and are the size of the computer and plug into the power port. So you always have options. You have the airplane adapter. You have some airplanes have AC plug-ins. So I said, no, I actually like it. I like having the better battery. Of course, I am afraid. I have had a couple batteries go kind of bad, really low life or totally dead, and you have to get them replaced, but Apple announced the price for it. That's as reasonable as you can be.
Up top there, yes, Yanni.
Yeah, okay. Steve Wozniak, for you a question. In the movie, there was expected that you would have 6 Apple Ones in the attic. How many do you really have?
No, we made 200 Apple Ones. About 150 went to stores that were opening around the country, and I think we sold, 150, 175. And then we had a trade-in program for $300 or something. You return your Apple One, we give you an Apple II. We didn't want to have to support them forever in the future. There was problems with doing 2 machines, and a lot came back to Apple, and then there was kind of a distribution. If you work at Apple, you can have an Apple One board if you want. A bunch of people just reach in for free and grab them out of this box. And I heard there's one guy that grabbed like 20 and has them in his house. And I forget who it is. And I didn't know. I've only got a couple of Apple One boards, and I think one was given to me as a gift. And I've donated some of my Apple Ones to museums. So, that was a neat product, because every product before it had all those switches that you saw. The switches and lights on the Altair, and every computer since then had a keyboard.
You still have the first one?
Do I still have the first one? I have the prototype that I hand-wired of the Apple One. Prototype of the Apple II kind of disappeared with the lawyers and all these different copyright lawsuits and Beatles lawsuits and things. They never returned that one.
Yes.
Find it on eBay somewhere.
What are all you guys doing now?
I'm tweeting.
He is busted.
You just read that too, actually.
Yeah, right. That's we were discussing this earlier in the day. We think the next film's going to be called Welcome to Twitter.
Yeah, I had a very easy life for a long time, being retired, doing what I want, philanthropy, teaching young children for 8 years on computers, and then my last kid finally graduated high school, and I was left all alone with this big house. And I started saying yes to everything that I've been saying no to. I hadn't used a passport in 10 years, and now I'm traveling the world a lot, saying yes to a lot of invitations to speak, meeting a lot of great people and companies. I am on the boards of tons of tech companies. I'm on advisory boards. I even made an appearance here at Macworld, which I've never done. In these years since my son graduated high school, I wrote a book, which I put off for 20-some years. And the book is called I Was, and started a company with some former Apple executives. And its company was strange. Like, you go for a long time, you raise hundreds of millions of dollars, and you have to acquire some company, but you don't know what it is in advance. You don't know what you're going to do. And it was an analog chip company, and I'm not an analog guy, so I managed to back out. I didn't like the way the company's being run. Once you get a public company, some of these executives like to pay themselves, you know, huge salaries and bonuses and triplers, and you never, and I just couldn't be around those kind of people. You know, it wasn't ethical. So I got out. I didn't get 1 cent of money or 1 share of stock. And you know, if something's just not right, I'm so glad I was so far away from that one. So I've been doing quite a bit. Just it never slows down. And I'm on the team that won the Segway Segway Polo World Cup 2 years, and we lost it this year. In my spare time, I put on a camp for kids, troubled kids in my house a couple of summers ago, and I let them use my house. Another friend was really putting it on more than anything, and we were giving them computers to keep. These troubled kids from New Jersey, we were giving them keyboards, the things I used to like to do in my classes. We were giving them cameras and all the computer accessories and education. So I invited a friend out that I'd met on a geek cruise, a MacMania geek cruise, and she came out to teach iLife because she was the best iLife teacher I knew, and then I showed her a little math puzzle, and she decided, oh, that maybe she'd consider marrying me. She was a mathematician. So we got married on 8/8/08 at 8:08 p.m. because I can remember the anniversary that way. 8's a good vibration.
I've been working at Google for the last 3.5 years, which is one of the only companies that approaches Apple in greatness.
Doing what?
Writing software. And I can't talk about
What kind of software?
What division?
Yes, sir.
I've just got a question for everyone. Apple's just announced that the 17-inch MacBook Pro will have a glossy option and a matte option. Do you think that this is a sign of Apple sort of caving into complaints and whinges? Is this a good thing? What are your thoughts on the choice there?
I remember when they came out with, I guess, the 15-inch, the MacBook or something, and it was only available in glossy. And I make sure all of my friends do not like glossy. You get the reflected lights and everything, only want the matte finish. I've only ordered my computers in the matte finish before, and I almost was going to go online and maybe buy a couple of 17 inches before they introduced the new one so that I could get them with the matte finish, the non-glossy, the anti-glare finish, you know, in case they stuck us with not having that option. But thank God we have the option still. I know it's the high-end, expensive machine, but no, I don't. I talk to everyone. Everywhere I go, I talk to artists and graphic artists. I talk to, you know, computer people, network people, and nobody likes those glossy screens. I guess it's cheaper because they're on all the cheap little laptops you saw. They started going that way at the same time Apple did.
I just want to make one quick announcement. Unfortunately, we have about another 10 or 15 minutes in this forum, so please make them good. We'll all be here, and at your gracious time, if you can stay, great. If not, we have seating outside in the bar upstairs, so go.
I want to know what your favorite prank you ever did on anyone.
Way down the end.
Favorite prank, I don't answer. I've done so many pranks, and I do them to this day, and they're really long, incredible ones that I can't. It's hard to pick a favorite.
I'll tell you a prank was pulled on me while I was working on the Mac. This was in, I think it was in about August of 1983, and I was at my desk, and I got a call from the Cupertino police. And the Cupertino police said, "Oh, I'm sorry, we sent a guy out because of your request, but the handicap space was not marked correctly, so we can't tow that Mercedes." It turns out Woz, one of the rules of Woz's pranks, he likes double pranks, that you can blame the prank on someone else. That's what it is. So it was the prank of both Steve Jobs and me when Woz called up the Cupertino police and reported Steve Jobs' Mercedes illegally parked in the handicap place and gave the name of the person reporting it as Andy Hertzfeld. My phone number out.
Down in the end, you've had her hand up for a long time.
20 years from now, not where do you think Apple will be, where do you want Apple to be as a company? Bigger, smaller? Where do you want it to be? Anyone?
How many years did you say?
20 years from now.
Boy, that's almost hard to imagine that far out. But of course, yeah, I want Apple to be thriving as it is today.
Just the same as now.
I want it to be the same as now. I think if we get too large in market share, come on, Macintosh is a lot of the users and how they feel about it, and how many people want to feel different. If everybody had a Macintosh, and then you're all saying, well, we want to be different, that's why we have it, it doesn't make sense. You know, it's a part of that feeling. So being a little less than normal. Every time our market share was reported shrinking smaller and smaller, I just said, now I'm that much more special.
Yes, sir.
So the iPod is a monopoly, almost. I mean, almost everyone has iPods rather than any other MP3 player.
Yes, sir.
If you could take a wild guess of where you think computing is going to go in the next, let's even say, shorter time frame of 5 years, where do you think it's going? Like, for example, mainframe to microcomputer. Now we're going back to the cloud, and we're using more mobile devices and collaborative. Where do you? We've got a lot of great minds up here. Where do you think computing is going to be in the next 5 years?
Off the desktop. Just wherever you need it, whenever you need it, for whatever you need it for.
You know, the trend towards mobility will continue, and I think the primary machine may still wind up being, go the tablet direction. There might be a keyboard, and it'll be a video display screen like we have now. I think 5 years from now. But it'll be, you'll take it home, it'll be multiple places at once. Companies will probably still buy machines on the desktop, though. Yeah. I don't think that'll change.
You think it'll be location-based?
No, I think the network will be really the center of your environment, like that main hard disk in your main computer is today. And that will allow all your information to be accessible to literally, I think most people really have maybe even up to a dozen different devices and yeah, in their pocket.
My question's for Jim. So you started trying to hook up music peripherals to the Apples. Have you continued doing musical things? Have you released any music?
When I started doing that, there was no such thing as MIDI. Right? And then MIDI came along, and I had built up this huge, full-blown MIDI studio, and then it became digital audio. And then it became this whole, you needed more hard drives and faster processors, and it was like, so throw away all that other shit and go buy this all new shit. And then Gibson Guitars bought my favorite software company and killed them, which made all of my software overnight obsolete. And then Apple released OS X, and then there was no more serial cords, it was only USB, and so it was just one fucking nightmare after another. So I threw the shit all away and bought a grand piano.
Yes, sir.
This is for Andy. Andy, were you surprised at how broad folklore.org became, and do you have any further plans for it?
I don't think it's all that broad, but it was very, very just personally satisfying to do it, and especially the book coming out of it. Actually, surprisingly, I was interested more in the software initially, making it a platform for people to tell stories, but I learned that the value was more in the stories than in the authoring system.
Folklore.com.
Yeah, yeah. Folklore.org is the website, and Tim O'Reilly convinced me to publish a book based on the stories, which many people, I was a little scared to do that because I was afraid they'd make me take the website down. But Tim O'Reilly understood that no, the website helps promote the book and stuff. But having the real book, it in a book form for some reason was more satisfying than having them on Folklore. So I'm really happy the book happened.
Yes, sir.
Is there something that you've noticed in terms of the difference between the older Mac crowd and the younger Mac crowd?
Gray hair?
Hair.
Bellies. Sorry, I missed the question.
Do you feel like the younger crowd doesn't quite appreciate Apple and where it started and where it all came from because they weren't around to experience that?
I think they do appreciate it because of the products. I think the reason they're excited about Apple is because the iPod, the phone are great. And I think the iPhone has so much of that same exact spirit that the Macintosh had. So the young kid who's maybe even never used a Macintosh but fell in love with their iPhone, I think I can relate to that.
Yeah, let me say, you know, I travel a lot, and I visit a lot of young people and old people, and the old people, you know, know all the stories, and it's very important to them. The young people have seen the movies and read their books, had it in their presentations, in classes, in high school, at universities. They've seen Pirates of Silicon Valley, and they are excited about the old days, the stories of the early Apple, the development of the Macintosh, yes. It's, I mean, surprising, but they are, and it's amazing. The Macintosh groups cover so many ages, and there isn't that huge a difference in why we feel the way we do, what kind of people we are.
I think there was Neanderthal nerds. It's like a genetic,
smart guy.
you know, defect. Like,
I got a question for Guy.
Yes.
I'm only asking you because this is what you used to do. Do you think there's still a place for evangelism and someone who goes out and gets people excited who may or may not be really understanding what the Macintosh is about and bringing them around?
I absolutely do. I think that, well, you know, there is still the other 95% to get, right? So there's that. But I think that, you know, you can't just depend on just the sort of inherent wonderfulness to come across. You have to go out and actually, you're actually changing people's behavior. And evangelism comes from the Greek word of bringing the good news. And was it Mike Murray who came up with that term?
Boych.
Boych?
Yeah, Boych picked that as his job title. Yeah. And that was the first time that I heard it used.
Okay, so Mike Boych, God, that is an old camera.
Quick take 150.
Yeah, film.
Binoculars.
So evangelism means bring the good news, and I can tell you to the core of our existence, we believed that when we told people about Macintosh, we thought we were bringing the good news. And I think the difference between evangelism and sales is that evangelism means that you have the other person's best interest at heart, whereas sales, you have your best interest at heart. And that's the difference between evangelism and sales.
Would you say that that is I think you just hit something on the head. Would you say that that is kind of like the core philosophy of Apple as opposed to other computer makers?
I think that the deep in the DNA, and we have half the DNA here, it seems to be that it was all about making people more creative and more productive. And that's, as a venture capitalist now, I tell companies, you know, if you change the world, you will probably make a lot of money. But if you start your company simply to make money, you'll just attract dickheads. You'll fail. So it's very simple. Change the world, the money will come.
I have a question for you, Guy.
Yeah.
I'm trying to post some pictures to your the Flickr page. I need all top stickers. Where do I get them?
Oh,
trust me, I'll take care of it.
Okay. Yes, sir.
If there's somebody that you think that could succeed Steve Jobs as CEO of Apple, who would that be?
Next.
I'm not doing anything with that
Anyone?
What's that on your wrist?
Yes, sir.
Oh. Well, with the announcement this week with Apple's Macworld, what is the future of conferences, which is what a lot of people are down here for?
Well, to some extent, I think the internet has made them not quite as important as they were. Like I just listen to the people real-time blogging it, right? I'm at my desk at work and I can follow it minute by minute by minute. And so I think, the network makes it so you don't have to be there much, and therefore,
But in that case, it'd have to happen.
Yeah, well, you'll still need the announcements somewhere. It's just the community really exists on the net first and foremost now, and then it's still great when people can meet each other.
We could just do a show of hands. How many people would sign up for a Phil Schiller webinar?
You gotta give Phil some love.
Phil's awesome.
Yeah, no, Phil, you know, how would you like to be Phil Schiller? My God, wow. Holy cow. The good news is you're replacing Steve Jobs. The bad news is you're going to talk about iPhoto upgrade. Where do I sign up?
Stop the iPhone.
The program for this year, it has a listing for a date in 2010, Macworld 2010 in San Francisco. So they're still going to do something. It's just that Apple is not going to be the lead there, and you know.
So it'll be interesting to see what they do to fill that gap.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll have WASKIA.
Would you do it?
I don't want to make any predictions as to what the direction goes right now. It's hard. You're just going to guess and you're going to be right or wrong. But I know what people are talking. Some people feel that we are the community, we're the important ones, and Apple has sort of snubbed the community and said, well, we're the important party, you aren't. And you know, so there's some worry in some people's minds about, you know, what it means and what's going on, and are we still going to be together? But without just one event out of the whole year of Macintosh products that you read about and you follow, you know, one place where we all gather together and meet other the most hardcore Macintosh fans are here. Apple says, oh, we introduced the Macintoshes to many more people a day in our stores than an entire Macworld conference, you know, but the real hardcore fans are here. So, you know, and so I wonder what it's going to mean. Business-wise, I can't see any real noticeable, instantaneous thing that you'll ever see. So you'll never be able to judge, did it matter?
Do you think it'll affect a lot of the third-party development that makes up so much of the rest of the conference?
I don't understand why Apple not being in Macworld would affect the third-party development. They develop for basically to have companies to make great products that go along with the Macintosh, to sell them and make money, and they'll keep doing that.
All right, guys, that's about all the time we have. If you guys have any questions.